Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the November 21st, 2023 meeting of the City of Roseville Transportation Commission. Everyone, please put all their personal electronic devices on silent mode at this time. Thank you. If you need to or would like to follow along with the agenda, they are available at the end of the table. If you're at home watching, all the meeting documents are available online at the city's website for the Transportation Commission. If you plan to speak tonight at tonight's meeting, please complete a yellow speaker card and return it. Yellow or are they blue now?
They're yellow.
They're yellow, okay. And return them to staff so you can be recognized. With that, Lainey, can we call roll?
Sure. Commissioner Mondal.
Here.
Commissioner Groff.
Here.
Commissioner Pell.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Chair Radford.
I'm here.
And Commissioner Festerson and Probst are absent tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Mondal, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of course, thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now brings us to public comment. Public comments is a time for anyone who would like to address the commission on transportation-related items that is not on tonight's agenda. Speakers shall restrict their comments to issues that are within the subject jurisdiction of the Transportation Commission and limit their comments to 3 minutes. The Brown Act, with certain exceptions, does not permit Transportation Commission to discuss or take action on items that are not listed on the agenda. Also, please state your name for the record. If anybody care to talk on an item that is not on the agenda? So public comment is now open. No one for public comment? Public comment is closed. Thank you. Next item is 5.1, and that is the approval of the September 19th, 2023 meeting. And commissioners, we have the minutes in front of us. I've reviewed them. I'm hoping the rest of my colleagues have. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve. Pending any questions?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is requests and presentations. This item is 6.1, legislative update. Interesting. I'm loving to see what we have in store, staff. And so I know Mark is here, and I believe some of the other city staffers are going to give us an update on what's going on in the state level.
Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Radford and members of the Commission. I'm Mark Walensky. I'm the city's Government Relations Administrator, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to discuss the recent legislative session and the federal appropriations process and some of the implications it might have on transportation-related matters. I wanted to begin my presentation with a brief review of transportation governance, as it is one of the components that lends to the complexities of transportation matters. Transportation governance involves a variety of federal, state, regional, and local agencies, including how funding is allocated to states and local governments. The federal government mainly provides funding and oversees certain safety requirements. Congress appropriates federal funding for transportation and establishes national transportation policy objectives. The main federal agency tasked with carrying out Congress's directives is, as you know, the Department of Transportation. The state, regional, and local governments help fund, plan, construct, operate, and maintain different transportation infrastructure such as highways, streets and roads, transit, and intercity rail. And in California, the legislature sets the state's overall transportation policies, including establishing state revenue sources and expenditure priorities. The legislature typically appropriates a lump sum in the Annual Budget Act for different types of transportation projects, while delegating the authority to select specific projects to various state entities and local governments. With respect to the this year's legislative session, before going into the legislative session, I wanted to share a brief overview of the city's state and federal advocacy program. As the Government Relations Administrator, I oversee the government relations team that is responsible for the city's state and federal advocacy program. A foundational element of the program is the city's legislative platform that outlines the city and each department's legislative and regulatory areas of support and concern. I've provided a copy of the platform for you on the dais, and copies are also available here at the staff table for the public. In addition to advocating on legislation and regulation, the team also provides monthly updates and reports to the City Council's Law and Regulation Committee that meets the fourth Thursday of the month. This year, which was the first year of the two-year legislative session, the legislature introduced more than 2,700 bills. The government relations team tracked more than 1,200 of these bills for city departments. Of those 2,700 bills, the legislature sent more than 900 bills to the governor's desk for his consideration and action. Of those, the governor signed 900 into law and vetoed 156. Of the 1,200 bills tracked for city departments, the governor signed 411 of the bills and vetoed 56. We're expecting the 2024 legislative session to be a very active session, with the legislature taking up many of the two-year bills that were introduced this year, while continuing to introduce new legislation on many issues that are important to the city, including transportation, housing, homelessness, land use, climate change, power, and water. The following is an overview of a few of the bills related to transportation that were tracked and advocated on for the Public Works Department. Assembly Bill 350, which is the Regional Transportation Plans for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG. The city supported this bill as it would facilitate greater interregional collaboration by more closely aligning SACOG's Sustainable Communities Strategy Update with those of its regional partners, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the San Joaquin Council of Governments, both for SACOG's current plan update and into the future. This bill was signed by the governor. Senate Bill 617, with respect to public contracts for progressive design build. The city also supported this bill for the cost benefits of progressive design build format provides for certain types of projects and the benefits it would provide for future city projects. Assembly Bill 251, California Transportation Commission, vehicle weight. This bill was signed by the governor and will require the California Transportation Commission to convene a task force to study the relationship between vehicle weight and injuries to vulnerable road users such as pedestrians and cyclists, and the degradation to roads, and to study the cost and benefits of imposing a passenger vehicle weight fee. The city watched this bill to understand the implications the task force may have on future policies and/or city fees. And then finally, Assembly Bill 316, vehicles, autonomous vehicles. This bill would have provided the operation of an autonomous vehicle with a gross vehicle weight of 10,001 pounds or more on public roads for testing purposes. The governor vetoed this bill, saying he believed the bill was unnecessary for the regulation and oversight of heavy-duty autonomous vehicle technology in California, as existing law provides sufficient authority to create the appropriate regulatory framework. With respect to the federal appropriations process, as you know, Congress recently passed a two-step continuing resolution, or CR, that was recently signed by the president. The bill allows that funding for the agriculture, FDA, energy water, the transportation, housing, urban development, and the military construction Veterans Affairs bills to run through January 19th, 2024, with all of the other remaining appropriation bills moved to February 2nd of next year. The new funding dates will give appropriators additional time to complete action on all the fiscal year 2024 spending bills. However, with uncertainty over the House's lingering policy disagreements, bipartisan cooperation will be needed among Senate leaders and the Speaker to realize a broader funding agreement next year. There is guarded optimism that with this additional time, Congress will pass the appropriation bills before the February 2nd deadline. This year, the appropriations process has added importance to transportation matters, with respect primarily due to earmarks. Earmarks are known as community funding requests in the House and community-directed spending in the Senate. This year, the city was successful in having several projects submitted either in the House or in the Senate as part of the federal earmark process. Congressman Kiley supported and submitted the $3.2 million Blue Oaks widening project, and it has been included in the transportation HUD bill. Several steps in the appropriations process remain before we'll know for certain that the project is approved and funded. The passage of the CR is positive news in the sense that it provides more time for the annual appropriations bill, including the transportation HUD bill that includes the city's earmark project, rather than creating pressure to pass a year-long continuing resolution without earmarks. This sends a signal that there is strong interest in passing the 2024 appropriations bill rather than throwing all of that work out and providing steady state funding without earmarks. And then with respect to federal funding, I wanted to bring up the following for you because it's a look into the next couple years with respect to federal funding and with respect to transportation. So as you know, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BIL, was signed into law by President Biden in 2021. The law authorized $1.2 trillion for transportation and infrastructure spending, with $550 billion of that figure going toward new investment and programs. Federal funding for transportation will be facing new concerns in the next several years due to the sunset of the BIL in 2026. The questions for transportation funding focus on whether existing programs with BIL funding would see significant cuts, and will the new programs that are part of the BIL be continued or funded at all? The uncertainty has some in Washington referring to this situation as the BIL cliff. Ultimately, this will require new transportation authorization legislation. Questions about this new authorization will include whether the legislation will revert to prior versions and focus exclusively on transportation projects and programs, or will be similar to the BIL and cover an array of infrastructure including but not limited to transportation, and whether transportation project earmarks will be included in the authorization, and if so, whether those will be at lower levels like in the House version of the transportation bill. In addition, developing and maintaining regional support for larger projects, regional coordination and cooperation will continue to be critically important for funding transportation requests, be they earmarks or competitive grant applications. Furthermore, self-help funding and non-federal cost shares will be of significant importance to improve the competitiveness of transportation projects and to cover possible increases in non-federal share cost requirements. And then finally, with respect to the city's advocacy program, I want to talk a bit about successful federal advocacy. An important element of the city's legislative advocacy program is the city's annual federal advocacy trip. The trip provides the city with the opportunity to meet with members of Congress, specific federal departments and agencies, and other national organizations. The trip provides an exceptional opportunity to share the city's, and depending on the topic, regional concerns and perspectives on issues and other matters. These meetings have resulted in many positive outcomes over the years, and the relationships developed during these trips have also proven to be invaluable when addressing an assortment of issues such as overcoming permitting issues, improving collaboration with the Veterans Administration to help veterans in need of housing, to name a few of the issues that have been brought forth during the federal advocacy trip. Additional benefits include establishing and strengthening relationships with members of Congress, their staff, and various other federal departments and agencies. The city's 2024 federal advocacy trip is being developed and will include meetings to discuss public works transportation projects, issues to establish new relationships with the Department of Transportation, and other issues that are important to various city departments. So in conclusion, the city's government relations staff will continue to work closely with the Public Works Department to understand the state and federal issues that may impact the department. We will also continue to work closely with the city's state and federal lobbyists to ensure that the city's departments, that the department's needs and positions on legislation and regulatory matters are understood and advocated on effectively. And this concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. And is there any clarifying questions?
I have one quick question.
And this is
It's
just to
not clarifying,
clarify.
though.
All right, we'll
It's
get,
just an
I was
additional
going to
question.
open it for public comment, then we'll go around. Perfect. So at this time, public comment is open. Would anybody care to speak on this matter? Public comment.
3 minutes?
Did you fill out a speaker card?
So,
Okay, well, that's kind of a requirement. So do you want to take a bite at the next apple and the next item, or did you have something you'd like to?
he can speak.
Okay, so no, you don't care to? Okay. So at this time, if no one cares to chair on public comment is now closed. And I will turn to the commissioners to any comments for Mr. Walensky's report. Starting over here. Mr. Roberts,
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
it's your time, Commissioner Mondo.
Okay, so you mentioned that the city government relations staff tracks the bills. Is there any way that citizens can also view what's being tracked?
So probably the best way is that at the Law and Regulation Committee that I mentioned, there are staff reports that are provided to the committee every month that provides an overview of an assortment of the bills that are being tracked. If you would like a complete list of that, I'm happy to provide that to you as well. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Commissioner Pell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walensky. I appreciate your presentation. It's very informative. I was wondering, I have a couple questions. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the regional, like, SACOG bill. I think Aguiar Curry. So what was that about, and how does that benefit the city?
So basically, it provides that greater collaboration because we're a member of SACOG. The city's a member of SACOG. And so what it does is it provides that greater collaboration between those other agencies and SACOG to ensure that goals and objectives and overriding concerns and areas of those goals and objectives are working together more cohesively.
So it's kind of like state legislation to align the state agencies to that or something? It just confuses me. There's like a state legislation to talk about regional cooperation, but maybe that's just how it works. And
So SACOG is working to develop partnerships throughout the region. We've all heard of the mega region in the area, including the Bay Area. SACOG through PCTPA is also reaching all the way up into Nevada, into Reno, because in order to be competitive, as big as Sacramento is, in order to be competitive for federal and state money, we've really got to work with other larger regional areas to put projects together to get their support, because we're just, quite honestly, we're fairly small when it comes to getting that type of money.
got it. Understood. Couple other ones, just two more. Are there any other key transportation 2-year bills that are already on the city's watch list? And sorry, the last one is, when will be the next update for the legislative regulatory platform for 2024?
Okay. So the 2-year bills, we have that list, and we will begin tracking as soon as the legislature comes back in January, because they'll start hearing those bills immediately upon their return to the Capitol. And so we have that list of two-year bills that we'll be watching and advocating for once they start hearing those bills. And then with respect to the legislative platform, so the City Council's legislative platform workshop is actually happening on December 20th at 4 o'clock. And at that time, staff will be bringing forward the edits to the legislative platform that for the City Council's consideration. During that platform, the city, state, and federal lobbyists provide an overview of 2023, and then we ask them to kind of gaze into their crystal ball and look at 2024, which is always incredibly interesting in an election year. And so they'll provide that overview to the City Council, and then Council will provide any edits or suggested edits that they would like to see the legislative platform at that meeting, and then that will be approved in a meeting, probably the second meeting in January.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Groff?
Quick question, the weight fees on the electric commercial vehicles issue, is that in anticipation for a significant reduction in fuel tax? Is that a look ahead to the future to try to mitigate some of that?
And so you're referring to,
It was close to the beginning.
It was this one. AB 2.
AB 251. So it will be that task force, so they're looking at those components of it to make the recommendations to the legislature for consideration on road maintenance and the study for the cost of the benefits of imposing passenger vehicle weight fees. So it really is more about the study of it as opposed to necessarily making that the consideration for changing the vehicle gas tax. I don't know that it will address a change to the vehicle gas tax, if that's the question.
Sort of. So, well, what's the impetus for this, or the need for this to be put together to look at a program like that? What I'm getting at basically is we know that electric vehicles are coming.
Right.
They're coming faster than ever. We know that there's been some propositions, some recent legislation about reducing vehicles that emit pollutants and so on. So the trend is to move towards electric vehicles, and that would include commercial vehicles.
Right.
However, as we know, electric vehicles don't go to the pump and pay all those taxes,
Right.
which the state relies on so much. So is this a beginning to look at that issue relating to commercial vehicles that might be electric in the future? That's kind of what I'm asking.
The stronger impetus is whether or not this could compel a change in the use, how people use vehicles, or going to alternative modes of transportation was more of the impetus of the bill. So if there were greater fees to vehicle weights and the cost to operate a vehicle was higher, would it compel, looking at this as a study, would it compel people to consider alternative modes of transportation?
Okay, so are we talking passenger vehicles such as a regular four-door sedan, or are we looking at passenger vehicles such as buses, those type of passenger vehicles?
My understanding it's more the passenger vehicles,
Okay,
but I'm happy to research that further and get that information back to you.
yeah. Maybe, 251. Sure. I think the overall question is that now that this has been presented and this is moving forward, are people who have electric vehicles going to be, how are they going to contribute to
Right.
the sources of taxes that maintain our roadways and everything else? So is there I've heard talk about a vehicle mileage tax. I'm not sure how you can do a weight fee tax on, or weight fees on a four-door passenger vehicle, since that vehicle isn't primarily designed or maintained for commercial use, such as like pickups or, big rigs or anything else. So just on the outside, that seems kind of hard. But yeah, if there's any updates that come around, maybe give us an update or something like that.
And I can share that it does call specifically for a discussion on how a passenger vehicle weight fee may change driver behavior.
Okay. Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Appreciate it, thanks. You're welcome.
All right, I guess that leaves me. So, I've had time to bend SACOG James Corliss's ear on some things that I thought were important to us here in Roseville and Placer County. Sometimes I feel we get forgotten about. It's such a big group, and Sacramento gets a lot of that attention. So, and I think Bonnie Gore and then our Roseville folks that sit on SACOG do a good job advocating for us over there. I was a little ignorant to Senate Bill 617, and that was on the progressive design build. Now, I'm assuming that maybe your conventional hard bid, would our design assist be a good candidate for some of those projects that might come to fruition once the funds start rolling in? I mean, I don't know. I'd probably like some more information on it and see how we can use that as something to move some of the projects forward that are way out in the queue because we just don't have the funding for it.
Yeah, so it's not just funding. It has to do with moving projects forward more quickly. Currently or previously, the only way you could do transportation projects, meaning roads and bridges, was through competitive bid. You could do facilities like buildings through design assist or design build, but you could not do any transportation projects. So what this bill did, one of the reasons we supported it, is it allowed cities to start looking into doing alternative modes of delivering transportation projects which could deliver them more quickly and maybe with less staff time than the traditional design bid. Because design bid, you've got two contracts, you got to get a consultant on board, you go through the whole design process, it takes a lot of time, then you got to go back through the whole approval process through council, and then you go out to bid, and there's that whole process. It works, it's very slow.
Yeah. I've seen Nevada Department of Transportation do alternative deliveries and seem like for the larger projects. So I think we have a few projects, like I said earlier, that would be interesting if we can use this and get them done a lot sooner than originally projected. So I don't think we have any further questions with it. Thank you, staff, and thank you for clarifying, Jason.
Could I interject before we move on to the next item? Technically, you've closed public comment, but it's at your discretion if you want to reopen it, if the gentleman has any public comments. And just to clarify, it's not, while we encourage people to fill out the speaker cards, it's not a requirement. So certainly he could be free to make a
Mr.
public comment.
Freitas, would you look here to speak on this item, sir?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. And a clarification for Mike, is it 3 minutes or 5 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Be short.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I am going to address the commission versus the staff. And I do respect the amount of time that went into this report. It's pretty significant and detailed. But what I found to be of an oversight is the word county. I didn't hear or see any reference of a county. And my understanding is that from the president's discretion through the federal legislation, that's then handed to the state. And then is it not the state that then transmits that down to the county and then the county to the city? So I was hearing a lot of detail specific to the city, but does not the county dictate what's being sent to Roseville versus Lincoln versus Rockland? That's enough I wanted to say there. but very comprehensive, and I have other topics.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Moving on to item 6.2. Actually, sorry, before I do that, I will, anybody else care to comment on public comment on this item? Once again, public comment is closed. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 6.2, fiscal year 2022, 2023. This is our annual transit performance report. And with that, this is an action item, so after staff gives their report, we'll decide if we're good with it, I'm sure. So back to Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Chair Radford, members of the commission. The item before you is Roseville's fiscal year 23 year-end transit performance report. This report covers ridership numbers, performance measures, and provides updates on some key transit-related projects. Ridership numbers and performance measures are for fiscal year 23, which was from July 1st of 2022 to June 30th of 2023. As a reminder, Roseville offers 3 types of service. We have our Aero paratransit service, we have our commuter and fixed route services. Our first slide tonight shows the total fiscal year 23 ridership figures for all 3 services, as well as the overall numbers in comparison to the same quarter last year. As you can see, ridership was up 7% compared to the previous fiscal year. Commuter ridership, which has been the hardest hit from the COVID pandemic, was up 20% from the last fiscal year, which is encouraging. All 3 types of service were up this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. While we're happy the ridership is up this year, we still have a ways to go to get to pre-COVID levels. This slide provides a good comparison of Roseville Transit's overall ridership prior to, during, and after COVID. The first 2 bars going left to right are pre-COVID ridership numbers. The third bar is the first quarter in which ridership was impacted by COVID. And as you can see, ridership since then has remained relatively steady, but well below pre-COVID numbers. And I've mentioned in the past, but this type of graph is representative of most transit agencies throughout the country. According to the American Public Transit Association, or APTA, their annual ridership report for fiscal year 23 indicated that public transportation ridership continued to rise from previous years, and the national transit ridership averaged approximately 65% of pre-COVID ridership levels. Roseville is a bit below that average at 58%. APTA's expectation is that ridership will continue to slowly increase, but remain below historical averages through fiscal year 24. While there's a number of service quality measurements that are provided in your report, I just wanted to briefly touch on a couple of them. The current slide deals with fare box recovery. Fare box recovery is the percentage of transit operating expenses that are covered by revenues from transit fares, advertising, and payments from other government agencies that support transit. California transit agencies typically have a minimum fare box recovery of 15%. Under normal circumstances, if Roseville Transit was below this established minimum percentage, we would be required to adjust services to increase fare collection or reduce operational costs in order to reach this minimum standard. However, because transit agencies across the state continue to be below the minimum fare box recovery ratio, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 149, which provided statutory relief to these requirements through fiscal year 23. Earlier this year, Assembly Bill 125 was approved, which extended this fare box relief through fiscal year 25-26. With this in mind, you'll see that Roseville's combined fare box ratio was 8.44%. Unfortunately, this low percentage is something many agencies experience throughout the country. One other quality measurement I want to quickly mention is Roseville's on-time performance. This measurement is one of the most important measurements we review. From a rider's perspective, this is one of the most important items when it comes to riding transit. A bus that's constantly running late is unreliable and can have a negative impact on our riders using transit to get to their destinations. All three services are near or above the range that were established in our short-range transit plan, so that's good news. We were just below our established range for both commuter and fixed route, but well above the range for Aero service, and this is consistent with last year's performance. So while providing transit service is a key component of our department, I'd like to highlight a few transit-related projects that were either implemented during this fiscal year or are currently in the development stage. One of the most exciting projects was the launch of Roseville's microtransit pilot program, otherwise known as Roseville Transit Aero, which is seen there on the slide. Following years of discussion and months of extensive behind-the-scenes work, Roseville Transit launched microtransit service in March of this year. Aero service provides riders an on-demand option that is more flexible than the fixed routes, similar to Uber and Lyft. With the launch of Aero in March, ridership has slowly increased. The first full month of Aero carried 1,440 riders. In October, just last month, Aero carried over 1,650 riders. So while this is encouraging, there's still work to do in order to make this service a viable option for those trying the service out for the first time. Operator and vehicle availability continue to be a challenge as we attempt to grow this service citywide. One of the most significant projects is our comprehensive operational analysis, which you'll hear a little more about tonight and in the coming months. This project was advertised during this past fiscal year and is now underway. As a reminder, the COA will analyze all aspects of Roseville Transit service, and staff expects significant changes in the next couple years as we begin the process of redeveloping Roseville Transit. Another significant project that's nearing completion is the electric charging depot out at the city's courtyard. Construction on this project began in August of 2022. Staff expects this $4.5 million depot to be complete this fiscal year. Once complete, the charging depot will charge up to 30 buses at one time. So construction of the charging depot is a significant step as Roseville begins its transition from diesel and gas to electric buses. The next step in this process is to secure electric buses to replace existing vehicles that are beyond their useful lives. While Roseville has been extremely successful in securing funding to purchase new electric buses, the delivery of these buses has been a bit of a challenge. Staff has been working with Proterra to develop these buses for over 2 years now. In March of this year, Roseville and Proterra signed contracts to build 10 electric buses. These buses were expected to be delivered in early 2024. However, just prior to the start of production, Proterra filed for bankruptcy. We still continue to meet with Proterra in an effort to determine if the current contract will be used by the company that ends up buying Proterra. But with that said, Roseville has not paid any money into this contract, and staff is currently reviewing all options for future bus procurements. In the coming month, a final decision will be made on the next steps. Either way, bus production has been delayed, and we now hope to have the buses delivered in 2025. One project impacted by the Proterra bankruptcy is the South Placer Express, otherwise known as Rapid Link. This new service will connect Lincoln, Roseville, and the Wad I-80 light rail station with 30-minute weekday service. As part of this new service, Roseville is purchasing 5 new electric buses that will also include 2 overhead chargers that will be constructed at the Roseville Galleria to provide en route charges for these buses. The Galleria charger contract will be awarded in December, and construction will take place early next year. The overhead chargers will be completed in early 2025, well before the buses are expected to arrive. I'll provide updates on this project in future meetings. And then the last project I just wanted to quickly mention is the Roseville Bus Shelter Replacement Project. Roseville currently has a number of old shelters that need to be repaired or replaced. The shelters look old. They do not provide a welcoming place to wait for the bus. Also, most of our shelters include glass panels that need to be replaced when broken. Costs to replace these glass panels have skyrocketed just this past year. In fiscal year 23, Roseville paid almost $10,000 in replacement glass panels. Because of this, staff has made a decision to replace up to 40 of these shelters using state funding that'll be available later this, or early next year. These new shelters will have a modern look, they'll be glassless, and they'll improve the bus riding experience for our residents as we combine this with our COA to change the look of Roseville Transit. So that concludes my report. Thank you for your time. I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schofield. Are there any clarifying questions before I open it up to public comment? Okay. And at this time, public comment is open for item 6.2. Anybody care to speak on this item? Sir?
I left my phone up here. It reads, "The 7-member Transportation Commission reviews and makes recommendations to the City Council related to the community's transportation needs." On and on and on. So, Mr. Schofield, you take your report and address it to the commission here, and then the commission recaps that and delivers it to City Council?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And then with regards to the,
Mr. Freitas.
okay, make it quick. Sorry
You're
to
good.
address
Right
you. The identification that ridership is going downward, this fare box is also not optimal. What I don't see showing is a ratio of Roseville's population. So as the population of Roseville grows, your transportation passengers would also increase. So if you're just isolating and looking at ridership and not population, it's kind of misleading. And same with fares. When you're looking at revenue, if you don't take into account how many residents there are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else under public comment that would like to speak on this matter? None. Public comment is closed. Back to the commissioners, and we'll start over here to our left with Commissioner Mondal.
Yes, I have a quick question on the accessibility of the Arrow app. I believe that if you still type in Arrow into the App Store, the Arrow app will not show up. I'm wondering if this is going to be addressed or if it has been resolved.
I think it's been resolved.
Okay.
I thought it came up
It did.
a while ago.
I checked.
We okay.
Yeah.
I'll check again.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Pell.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Schofield, for the presentation. I had a couple comments or questions. There was an increase in ridership, 7% we saw, but a decrease in fare box recovery ratio of like 20%. And I think last year we talked about, really trying to focus on ridership and focus on driving a transportation system that's working and getting people where they need to go. But I was wondering, is there any key drivers on driving fare box recovery ratio down so significantly relative to last year?
The main issue there, and so last year we were at 11%, and this year we're at 8%, so it dropped 3%. The main driver was our Arrow service. We increased from, I think it was 1.1 million in operating costs to 1.5 in for this year. And the main reason for that is the previous year we had a significant challenge with bus operators. So we were limiting the Arrow service to make sure we had more fixed routing commuter service. We kept that without having to cancel as often. And then in this past fiscal year, we've been able to get more operators, which increased our operating costs because we were able to now add more service out there to accommodate the Arrow service.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the main culprit for the cost, because it does jump out at you that ridership went up, but the percentage went down, the fare revenue.
I mean, it makes sense. I think if you're driving to service and you're rolling out this new Arrow system, it seems successful or it's increasingly successful, and you have an increasing ridership. I was actually wondering, you're saying you were slowly increasing ridership. are we bumping up against capacity problems? You only have so many buses, you only have so many people. Like, at what point do you get saturated and start struggling there?
I mean, that's kind of the challenge we're having right now, just with the increase from 1,400 to 1,600, the capacity issues. And like I said, it's both vehicle and operating. We've turned the corner with operators. They seem to be coming in a little more regularly as far as, the hiring process. But we still need more vehicles, and we're working with vehicles that are beyond their useful life. So part of this electric vehicle purchase includes vans that we'll be working on this year to hopefully replace some of our older vehicles that are in the shop quite a bit. So we do have the challenge where, you use a first-time rider can get on the app and it'll be a 2-hour wait or more, and that's not appealing. But we're trying to balance what we have right now to accommodate what we can.
Are the vans tied up with the Proterra bankruptcy?
No, the vans were a separate procurement that we just got. Contracts were signed last week, basically, that allows us to now get those or start the process of purchasing them. So, and I can provide updates on those later as they get closer.
Cool. Just two more, Mr. Chair. One, electric charging depot sounds cool. I would love to see it at some point. I don't think I've ever been to the Corp Yard, so it'd be cool to see that kind of infrastructure. It's great that the city is investing and working on those kind of key infrastructure upgrades that are going to fund the city into the future. And then lastly, we have old shelters. I guess we've heard some public comment in the past on bus stops with no shelters, and I've seen some information on governments that have done fairly quick build, out of making sure at least we have benches everywhere, somewhere to sit, focusing on riders and giving them some dignity when they're riding the bus. And so just considering, what about the cases where there's no shelter or not even a seat?
Well, we're using the COA, the Comprehensive Operational Analysis, to look at where people are riding, and we have kind of a lower bar right now because the ridership's not where it was, but we're going to be focusing on those areas that have the most riders for our shelters. We also will be looking at possibly installing benches at some locations, but we're mapping that out right now. So, like I said, currently our project is up to 40 shelters. We think we'll be replacing around 30 to 35, and then we'll have room for maybe 5 more if the demand shows through the COA that there are people waiting somewhere that don't have a shelter. So we will be looking at that.
Great. Excited to talk more about COA later.
Yeah, and I will, as far as a tour of the Corp Yard, that staff and I have discussed going out there, because I know the commission last year, we did a nice tour, we did some trails, but at the time the Corp Yard wasn't where it is now, where we'd love to show it off, it's basically ready to go. So we'll incorporate that next year as one of our meetings. We'll do some site visits.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Mr. Groff?
The Proterra issue, when was the contract signed to purchase the buses from them?
We had one in March, or we had 2 that were signed in March, and their
Of this year?
bankruptcy was filed in June.
Okay. Yeah. Was there any consideration or obligation on their part to inform the city that there were some issues going on about their financial status, or?
I don't think there was an obligation. I know we were tracking their stock price as kind of an indication of how healthy the company was. So there were some ideas, but yeah, I mean, when we started engaging with them, I mean, it was almost 3 years ago. I mean, going through the initial stuff, and they were the up and coming kind of superstar of electric buses. I mean, they had just all this great press, and they were doing it differently, and nice looking buses. And anyways, things just turned quickly in the last year on them. So unfortunately.
So the city still has the contract to receive the buses from them, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. But they're the manufacturer of the buses, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So looking in the future, the concern will be, is there any concerns with maintenance, parts, training for the mechanics who work on them? If they do go completely out of business and don't recover from bankruptcy, what's the conversation like about that?
Yeah, and we're having those conversations right now. We met with Fleet the last couple days, and that's one of their main concerns. Not just the last couple days, last few months, like even if we move ahead. So what's happening is Proterra's assets are being sold. They were actually sold last week. And so there's a new company called Phoenix Motor Cars that just purchased them. And so we, as staff, are now doing our due diligence to decide what our next steps are. And so we're, but that is definitely one of the issues we'll be looking at, because they might be able to promise us, hey, we can get you a bus in a year, but what happens after that? I mean, the parts are a big issue, warranties, items, especially with electric buses, right? As we're still relatively in our infancy stage with them.
How many buses were purchased or on the contract?
The contract was for 10,
10.
but we also have another grant for 7 more, so it would be 17 total.
Do you have to go through Proterra for that 7?
No. Well, the grant is written to such where Proterra is listed as the company, but there's a process that we're going on right now to change that to a competitive bid process.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at that. And really within the next month, we will know what we're doing.
Okay. I did have a couple questions about Aero, but you filled in, and the app was one of the questions as well. So I had noticed that a little while ago that was the case. So, all right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Groff. Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you for your presentation, Ed. I had the same kind of thought and sentiment that the gentleman from the public had was, well, we had a ridership increase of 7%, but how does that line up to how many more people live in Roseville in the last year? It was just a curious thought. I don't know if you necessarily have the answer or not, but I guess that also leads into my secondary thought of like, what is the expectation of increase year over year for a ridership program within the city? Is we know that there's an expectation for inflation every year. Is there something similar for ridership when it comes to transportation? I don't know.
No, we don't have an expectation, and I think coming out of COVID, there's so many unknowns. I mean, we've dropped significantly from where we were pre-COVID. So I think, we're happy to see increases. I mean, that's kind of the first step, but bigger picture, we know we have challenges with our system, and that is part of what this comprehensive operational analysis is going to do, what it's doing is looking at our service, looking at some of our weaknesses, and where we can improve. And that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be working on collectively here next year, going through some of those, and there'll be some tough decisions. But yeah, so we're happy with the increase, but we think we can do a better job out there, and we're going to be working on it. It takes time.
I was thinking, I guess along the lines of what you were saying, I was kind of thinking the same thing as I was listening to you do the report is, gosh, it seems like such a mystery why like something like this hasn't quite recovered as quickly as other things out there in the post-COVID world. And I just started kind of jotting down a bunch of thoughts. And I know you guys are really gearing up to do a transportational analysis. And I just thought, well, I may as well throw my thoughts out there and hopefully they stick into your guys' transportation analysis when you do them. And I was just thinking of like, well, why don't people ride the bus post-COVID? Is it just because less people travel in general? And how does that compare to like general traffic statistics? I know that with those PCTPA keeps all of those crazy general traffic statistics out there somewhere. And just how does that compare to like the difference between how much transit's used versus overall traffic? And then the other thing that I thought was, well, how does Aero affect the bus ridership? And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I feel like that could be a focus in the transportational study when you guys do it, is
Absolutely.
kind of, stealing out of one bucket to put it into another bucket here in the city of Roseville. And how does that affect just driving a bus in a circle all day out here? Anyhow, I just had a few of those thoughts while listening to looking at all the different numbers and analysis you were throwing up on the screen, and just thinking, well, why doesn't it come back up? It seems like a bit of a mystery, but I guess that's what you guys are trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it's a mystery like throughout the country in a lot of aspects. But from our side, the biggest hit was the commuter buses, right? We had 11, 12, 13 commuter buses in the morning and same in the afternoon, and they were packed. We would have, Roseville-specific fares because we had too many people. We were trying to allow Roseville residents to have a priority. I mean, that was really our fare box recovery. It was 60, 70% there. And then with COVID, I mean, people just aren't going back to work. We have 6 commuter trips in the morning, 7 in the afternoon, and we have plenty of capacity. And, unfortunately, that's one of the things we have to look at the COA is, are our resources better served on our local routes or with Aero than going to Sacramento with, 8 to 10 people on the bus? But you also don't want to eliminate that. But that's kind of one of the challenges, and that's one of the things. But that's where we were the most hit, and I think most agencies will say that. I think your local fixed route service comes back at a little higher rate than like a commuter service. And then as far as Aero overlapping with fixed route, that's definitely one of the things we're looking at as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned work from home policies, and certainly that probably has a large effect on the transit system. Just more people are working from home and just don't need to travel on a daily basis necessarily. But work from home policies are changing, right? Like, I think a lot of people are experiencing whatever work that they're in, you're having to go back into your office, depending upon who you work for, more and more as we're moving into the future. So how does that affect, maybe ridership picks up naturally just because of that? Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, and I'm excited to see what you guys find when you start really diving into it.
Me too.
All right, I guess that leaves me, and I'll tell you, hearing the report that we were going to be finishing this charging station at the Corp Yard, was excited to see these buses and how that would come, and a little discouraging to hear that Proterra is going belly up. The silver lining, great job from finance, not paying them, here's the money, build our buses. So well done. Yeah, that would be a little different report. I think if you had to come with that information. But so I guess, seeing the bugs worked out of it, when these new technology comes out. So I'm hoping that we get the top product, and actually a little curious and probably will be riding them. Typically, I was against public transit, but sitting here the last few years, I do see value. And I'll tell you, you clarified my suspicion that a lot of our numbers not returning to what they were pre-COVID had a lot to do with the commuter. And I go down to Sacramento, and I saw all those state buildings. It's a ghost town. We've done a good job here in Roseville, our leaders have, about keeping open and keeping people in the workplace. And, the state and Sacramento, I'm not going to drag them to the mud, but it's a completely different dynamic over there, and that does affect us. We're a lot of folks that work or used to work in Sacramento live here, and so that made a lot of sense. And I did share Mr. Freitas's concerns. I said, yes, our numbers went up, but we've grown. I mean, you see the west side of town has really blown up, but once again, we've come up with new ideas here. I've been on the commission for quite a few years now, and the microtransit, when you guys adopted Aero, and what can we do to get folks using it? And it's too bad Mark was excused, because he could probably explain it better. I do no justice to it. We're held to the requirements by the state and the federal government to have alternate transportation, and not just the trails that we all love, but public transit. And so I think that you guys are doing the best you can, coming up with new ideas, so we're not absorbing such a big hit. I did see that on the Aero Transit, Lennar had a little advertising. I'm assuming that's some way to generate funds, the marketing.
Yeah, the advertisement on all the buses goes into the fare box ratio, or recovery ratio. So
Fantastic.
yeah, we've been doing pretty well with the advertising.
I would think that there's opportunity on those 40 new shelters as benches as well. I'm assuming we're already doing that, but you can see that would be a pretty good avenue to help us kind of absorb some of this cost. And again, I mean, I don't have the solution, but I can definitely appreciate you guys coming up with new ideas and trying to find a way to get people, once again, using public transit. And I don't think I have any other clarifying questions to it. I did enjoy the report. And the numbers usually bore me, but the charts were pretty telltale. And I would like to see us getting back to those numbers, but the steady increase is encouraging. And with that, this is an action item, so I'll open the floor for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion,
Seconded.
and I have a second. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Commissioners, please, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's like the ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is 6.3. This is our active transportation plan and comprehensive operational update. And staff, we're going to hand it back to you. Is that Ms. Engelke?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here tonight to give you an update on both the active transportation plan and the comprehensive operational analysis. As a reminder, both the ATP and the COA, as we refer to them, are being done concurrently. The active transportation plan and the comprehensive operational analysis had a kickoff meeting in October with city staff and consultants. Roles and responsibilities, outreach efforts, and project timeline were discussed. The ATP consultants, Alta and SOMAS, will look at connecting the major trail systems, enhancing on-street bike facilities, identifying key pedestrian shortcuts and crossing improvements, and addressing major barriers to active transportation. Currently, the plan is in the existing conditions and data collection phase, which will last through January. The city has shared bike and pedestrian files with the consultant, as well as demographics, popular locations and destinations, general and land use plans, design standards, traffic studies, and other items to understand the local policy baseline and Roseville infrastructure. Alta, our consultant, will summarize their conclusions into an existing conditions summary memo, and this memo's focus will be on existing deficiencies and perceived barriers that prevent people from walking and biking. The next phase of the project is developing goals, objectives, and policies. Now to the COA portion. Roseville Transit hired Innovate Mobility to do an in-depth study to identify Roseville Transit's strengths and its weaknesses. Innovate Mobility has spent the last couple of months gathering information on existing conditions. This includes the following: performing peer reviews, analyzing system performance measures, doing market assessments by comparing Roseville to other similar transit agencies, and reviewing financial data. The existing conditions work is expected to be completed by the end of this year. Additionally, Prozio Communications, in tandem with city staff, will be leading the outreach efforts for both the ATP and the COA. We expect to have the first public workshop to share information in early 2024. As always, we will keep the Transportation Commission updated on our progress. That's the end of my report.
Okay. And there's no clarifying questions? Okay, and this is open for public comment at this time.
Can I follow the commission? Can we go out of turn? Or do I
No,
have to go first?
no, that was my mistake, and I decided to open it back up. This would be the time for public comment.
I'm going to be short again. This actually applies to all topics tonight. In running a city, running a county, running a state, running a country, that's government. Yet there are benefits to look in the private sector, which a lot of you also work, I assume. And the success of a good business is listening to the customer. Are actions being taken to listen to the passengers, the customers, the residents? I know there's surveys, but I think very aggressive surveys, meaning you get on a bus, if the rider completes a survey at the end of their trip, comp them another ride. I imagine they'll be filling out more surveys. I don't know, just me. The other point is, I don't know how large government is within Roseville, but in your two plans that are going to come to a conclusion, I heard you're outsourcing to even another group.
Mr. Freitas, can you
Okay.
address us, please?
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
My bad. Is there staff on board within Roseville to do the studies versus going outside? Or has the studies within Roseville found diminished returns and we're just trying what we've always tried versus going outside? Because that's an expense now when we hire a consultant. And I'm sure people who are residents in Roseville, if they listen to the customer, the secret is there. Thank you. Good night. I'm done talking tonight.
Thank you for your
Thank you, sir.
comments, Mr. Freitas. Okay, and questions, clarifying from the commission, Mr. Pell?
I don't think I have any questions. I'm just excited to see what comes out of the analysis in the next couple months.
Okay, Commissioner Mondel.
I don't have any comments. Thank you for the report.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it. I was wondering on the existing conditions and data collection, you know, it sounds like they're coming up with an existing conditions memo saying, okay, here's why we think there are, you know, structural barriers to alternative transportation. In the theme of Mr. Freitas' comment, like, you had mentioned that there is, you know, opportunity for public input down the road. Is Alta looking at, you know, population surveys to understand, is there more to this existing conditions thing? Yes, there is, you know, it's hot in Roseville, true, but also, like, you know, are there public perceptions of why people don't, you know, get out of their cars? Or is there, like, structural, you know, I guess I'm not really sure what that looks like. And then would that be something that we could share with the, like, where is that shared with the public for them to find out about that?
So the existing conditions memo will be public. Everything we do is public. So that'll be on our website. We will have a whole, it's called Transportation 360. It hasn't been released yet, but we have a website that just solely is dedicated to the ATP and the COA, updating our citizens on, you know, where we are in the phase, existing conditions, and then going forward. But some of the neat things are we are going to have public outreach. So you're going to be able to come to open houses, pop-up events. We're going to have interactive maps. So we're going to get some of that data, and we'll be able to share it at these open houses, some of what these barriers might be.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very
I
much.
look for your feedback in the spring.
Oh, I
Yeah.
look forward to providing you feedback. It'll be great. Thank you very much.
Yep, we wouldn't expect anything less
No,
from
no,
you.
you really
but-
shouldn't.
That's why you're here.
Commissioner Pell. Commissioner Groff?
So what kind of community outreach is there, or publication is there going to be about all of these events? Do you have any ideas or?
So Prozio Communications is doing an outreach plan right now, so they're formulating that, so I can't speak exactly what it's going to be.
Okay.
But we're talking going to city events, holding little tabling events, just out in the community. Don't know exactly where they're going to be, but a lot of the open houses will be on city property. Anybody can come and, you know, listen to the COA and the ATP at the same time and give their feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I think I've seen you guys, the city doing an informational, I guess, booths at like Music in the Park and some of our events. You guys do a good job of that. But the website's always a really good avenue for information on these things. And like I said, you guys are very transparent with things, and Yeah, looking forward to kind of getting a better comprehensive of it as well moving forward.
And if I can add something, I totally forgot the social media aspect of it. So you're going to be seeing it on Nextdoor, to come to our city website to learn more.
Sounds like a winner. Thank you, Ms. Engelke. I don't have any further comments to it, and so this isn't an action item, so we move on to item 6.4, the Sacramento Kings Game Day Express updates. Now, that's the fun time to ride the bus, so I've been told, and looking forward to seeing what options we have to date.
Chair Radford, if I may, I just want to introduce Zach Presley to the commission. Zach was recently promoted from within the city of Roseville to Assistant Transportation Planner, so you will be seeing more of him in the future.
Thanks, Ed. Good evening, Chair Radford and members of the commission. Like Ed said, my name is Zach Presley. I'm a transportation planner with our department. I'm here to provide an overview of the Roseville Game Day Express transit service, which is back for the Kings 23-24 season. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, I'll provide some brief background on the program. Roseville's Game Day Express service was originally introduced back in 2017. This unique transit service allows riders to travel comfortably to and from Sacramento Kings home games. Roseville residents with a valid commuter ID card can ride for $3.25 each direction or $6.50 for round trip. Non-residents can travel for $4.50 each direction or $9 for round trip. Children ages 2 and under ride for free. Trips can be booked online through Roseville's website, or riders can simply show up at the bus stop without a reservation. The Game Day Express picks up right outside at the Vernon Street transfer point location. Passengers can take advantage of the free parking available at either parking garage downtown along Vernon Street. The bus departs to Sacramento an hour and 15 minutes before tip-off, and passengers are dropped off at the Sacramento Valley Amtrak station, a couple blocks from the arena. Once dropped off, riders are encouraged to attend the game in person at the Golden One Center or enjoy any other activities in the area. The bus departs the Sacramento Valley Amtrak station 30 minutes after the final game buzzer and returns to Roseville. Like all of our transit services, ridership for the Game Day Express was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, with the pandemic being less of a concern going forward and the Kings having a successful season, ridership has risen and continues to improve. With initial ridership numbers rising over the previous season and the Kings looking to have another great season ahead, Roseville is proud to offer this service again for the 23-24 season. This concludes my report. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any clarifying questions before I open it up? Public comment? Okay. No. Would anybody care to speak on this item on public comment? Public comment is open. Okay. Seeing none, public comment is closed, and I will bring it back to the commissioners for clarifying questions and comments. Commissioner Mondal.
Yes, I have one clarifying question. You mentioned that some Roseville residents or not outsider residents can show up on game day without a reservation. Is there any potential capacity issues, or could there be with this?
There could be, although it isn't common. There are times where the rides are really crowded. The buses are very crowded, but generally trips will be available, spots will be available to hop on in advance. But that is where reserving your spot ahead of time will come in handy.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Pell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presley. Appreciate the information. I've heard great things about the Game Day Express and look forward to riding it sometime. The one question I did have, you said Roseville residents with a valid commuter ID. Is that right?
Yeah.
Where can those be obtained?
Yeah, they could actually be obtained right across the street at our main office here. And so although Roseville residents may live in Roseville, you do have to show that proof with a valid utility bill or utility statement to get that ID card from us.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Groff.
Along with the rider ID, is a driver's license okay to? If
It is not. It's not one of our accepted forms of ID for the resident discount, at least. So you could still ride. You would just pay the non-resident price in that case. You can get an ID card made for free at our office, though.
But just bring something more than your driver's license.
Bring your
that says
utility
Roseville on it.
bill or utility statement to prove that you're a Roseville resident, paying Roseville utilities.
Okay. The other thing is, welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
That's it.
Commissioner Roberts.
Welcome. Good to meet you. My questions are probably more personal in nature because I just purchased tickets to go to the Kings game in a couple of weeks for my entire family, and I've always been very interested to use this commuter service. I used to work here on Vernon for my personal work, and I would see the advertisement on the bus shelter outside of the city hall here, and I always thought, oh, it'd be cool to ride that. So I'm glad that the city has it. I think it's a really neat thing, especially because it costs so much dang money to park downtown when you go see a Kings game. But my question, I guess, would be, how popular is it? Is it encouraged that I make a reservation beforehand? Or does it usually get full on the bus?
I would recommend it. There have been times where we have larger groups that come out and reserve ahead of time. There have been times where we've actually needed 2 buses to take those folks downtown. So it's not occurring often necessarily, but we hope that it does, and it's not a bad idea to book ahead of time.
And then I assume the bus travels to and from Sacramento relatively in a normal car fashion. There's no stops.
Direct route. Yep.
Plus or minus 30, 35 minutes to get back to Roseville.
Yep.
Kind of thing. Yep. All right.
Nonstop.
Thank you very much.
Good questions. And again, Zach, welcome and congratulations on your promotion. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
The commuter ID definitely piqued my interest on riding this to a Kings game. I envisioned myself taking my family down there, being that it's $25 to park during a Kings game, and that's dropping you off relatively staggering distance to and from the arena. So I like that. Was curious because it's a half an hour after the game ends. I've been in that arena where they win, and half an hour is towing it pretty close. I know it is, like I did allude to, staggering distance, but have we had anybody that maybe didn't quite make it back?
It doesn't happen often as far as I'm aware. Actually, I don't think we have many reports of it happening. The drivers do have the contact information of the riders, and so generally they'll make phone calls to the riders if they happen to not be on the bus before departing. But it is only a couple blocks away. I've ridden it a few times myself, and it seems like plenty of time to get back to the bus.
Love that.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I'm just concerned about some of my family that might partake in some of the festive activities at the game. So the commuter ID, we can obtain that across the street. I was wondering, minors, is there an age limit on the rider fare? I mean, the riders.
So, like I mentioned in the report, ages 2 and under ride for free. Otherwise, the normal pricing would apply. And then all riders need to be accompanied by an adult 18 or older.
Okay, and I was more concerned about the ID. So,
Oh,
like my son at 12, he would need to get an ID for himself as well?
He would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. No, very good report, and I think you're going to have a few of us that are probably going to jump on this. You might have a second bus needed. So
Awesome. Thank you.
thank you. And so that concludes the staff's items, and that brings us to item 7.0, and that's the commission report. And is there any additional items that staff would like to bring to us at this time?
None at this time.
All right. That is good. And then commissioners, do you guys have any information items to report? Briefly, updates?
No, thank you.
One thing I did want to commend Commissioner Mondel. She's done a good job serving us. I believe tonight may be her last night, being that we don't have a December meeting. So I'd like to commend you. You were terrific. You participated, and yeah, hopefully the new commissioner that we get does just as good of a job.
I loved every moment in this thing.
Awesome. And with that, we're on to adjournment. And is there a motion at this time to adjourn?
All motion.
Motion?
Seconded.
And I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and we'll See when the next commission meeting is. Thank you.
Good questions.